This is Amud Yomi, Gemara in Shabbos, Daf, Lamed Ches, Amud Beis, and we're holding on the bottom of Lamed Ches, Amud Aleph. About 10 lines from the bottom. First one on line is Ibai Loho. Continuing the sugya of Maisa Shabbos, a difficult sugya of figuring out the differences, the nuances between Mezid and Shaygeg. At what point it is usher to benefit from the item, at what point not. So Ibayilahu, we begin with a Shaila. Avar Vishaha. What happens if you're over b'mezid mai? Mikatur Rabbanan. I lie. Is there an Isser created by the Rabbanan on an Isser Shehiyah? So again, let's remind ourselves, an Isser to Rabbanan. But on the other hand, we have this concern that because it's a Rabbanan, it's lighter, people might come to be Ma'arim, people might come to say, it was a Shaygeg. So did the Rabbanan make a Kinas or not? So Tashema says the Gemara Damar Shulbar Nazar Amar Chanin Shalach Rav Yosef Sipayri Matzachamin Shenishtau Al Gabe Kira. He found a pot of water that was on a fire, which was not Garafikatum. V'lo Yasser Lam. And because it was mitzamik v'ra'aloi, he didn't say they can't eat it. Similarly, they found beitzim mitzumakos, eggs that are roasting, shenashal gabikir, that also were, there was an isser shehiyah dam on them. Ve'aser lam, and those he said it was aser. Why? Because the eggs were mitzamik v'yafaloi. So says the Gemara, what did Rav Chia mean? Why? What is the reason that Rav Chanina said that Rav Yosef said it's also on these eggs? Lav lo Isser Shabbos, is it not also tit on that Shabbos? Why? Because you're over an Isser Shehiyah, and therefore we see that if you're Avar Vishah, there's an Isser to Rabbanan and a Kanas to Rabbanan. So that's not what he meant. The Shabbos Haba, he meant that it should be also not just that Shabbos, but, Elul Shabbos Haba, meaning not that the item, that the Chefsa is aser. He meant that the Maisa, that the act that was done is an act of Be'isr, and it shouldn't have been done, meaning next Shabbos, don't do that. But Mechlal, says Gemara, what do we see from here? The Beit Mitzumakim Misamik Yafah Ninu. It would sound like these eggs are Misamik V'Yafeh. Says the Gemara in Damar of Chamer Chnina B'Machzis Rachti Ani V'Rabbi L'Makom Echad. They fed us this egg dish, and we ate a lot of them. So we see that the fact they were cooking more, it got better and better. So it proves the Gemara that in this scenario, we don't necessarily have a raya that there was a kanas, because it could be just saying that it was ulcer for the upcoming Shabbos. And we quote the Mishnah Beisel Aimrim, Av Machzirim, once it's Garafikotin, you can even do Chazara. Amar Rav Sheisha says we turn off the Lamachas Beis Davir Machzirin. According to his opinion, Beis Hillel, that allows you to do Chazara, to return food to the fire, Afilu B'Shabbos. V'af Rav Aishia, Amar Av Machzirin Afilu B'Shabbos, you can do Chazara on Shabbos. Amar Rav Aishia, Pamachas Inu Aim Din Le'ila Mir Chia Rabba. We are standing in front of Rav Chia. They brought us a small pot, Shalchamin, Midiyuta, Hatachtaina, from the upper Aliyah, Hatachtaina, Ladiyuta, Aliyah, we brought down this pot, Umizagno Loi, Esakais, they poured us a cup, and then what do they do with it? Vechzarnu, they brought it back, Limekaima, they put it back on the fire on Shabbos. They didn't say anything. So what do we see? We see that Chazara, to return something to a flame, is mutter even on Shabbos itself. Amar Rav Zrika, Amar Rav Abba, Amar Rav Tidai, Lo Yishanu. This didn't allow to do Chazaras. Elo. So now we're learning the Tanoim of Chazara. We're segueing from Shehiyah into Chazara. We began with Shehiyah, the first few blot discussing when you're allowed to leave something cooking into Shabbos. Shehiyah. And in the world of Shehiyah, there's basically two rules. Had to do with how cooked the item was and whether the flame is covered. Garafikatum. Now we're going to see in the world of Chazara, there are additional Tanoim, as the Gemara says right now. Lo ishanu ela aidan biyada. You could only put it back if it's still in your hand. If you're holding on to it, aidan biyada. If you put the pot down on the ground, aser, you're not allowed to put it back onto the oven. Amar Rav Abba, Rav Tadai, Davad, Legarmehu Davad. He did it according to his own din. And so machlaikas. If you put the pot down, are you allowed to do chazar or not? Says the Gemara, this din is in reality machlaikas anayim. Kliyimar Rav Diva Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda. Tavai Mishayt Rav Elazar Amri. Chanamer Mkshadim Adi Motor Al Gabe Karka also. Chanamer Nichal Al Gabe Karka Nami Motor. And this din, this Tanai, big machlaikas as we're seeing here in the Gemara. Just to go all the way to the Lamaisa, of course, we paskin that has to be oidem biyada. You have to be holding it and not placing it on the ground. We'll just mention quickly the Ramaisha that he says you don't have to physically be holding it as long as you're connected. Your hand is on the pot. That's enough. Amar Chizkiya Mishmei Dabai. Continues Chizkiya about 20 lines down. The first one line is Nami Ost Mutter. Says Chizkiya, Ha Da'amir oidem biyadai Mutter. That which we said oidem biyadai. When it's still in your hand, you're able to return the kedera onto the kira. It's only referring to if when it's taken off the oven, you have das to put it back. If you weren't thinking to put it back, usr. Says the Gemara Mechlal, Dagabi Karka, it sounds like if it's on the ground, it's going to be usr. Meaning each condition is independent of the next. Second lashon, meaning in this lashon, Chizki is going on the din of karka. So now, according to this lashon, mechlal, is going to be mutter. Of course, again, we paskin that each tanai is independent. Boy, Rav Yirmiyah asks Rav Yirmiyah Tlon b'makil ma'u. What's the din if you hang up the pot? Or hinichal gabi mita ma'u. You don't put it on the ground, but it's not oida biyadai. It's somewhere in between. What's the status of that? Says the Gemara. Similarly, by Rav Ashi pina mimechal amecha ma'u. What's the status if you transfer the food from one pot to the next pot? And in all these cases, says the Gemara, Teiku, we don't have a teretz. And just to point out a fascinating machlekes or Moshe Feinstein versus the Mishnah Brura, if you could say that, because they don't really quote each other. Well, certainly Mishnah Brura doesn't quote Ramesha doesn't quote anyone. Is that this din of being a mecham is a very relevant din. If you want to add hot water to your cholent, the easiest way is you have your urn, you put it into a cup, and then you can pour it into the cholent as long as garf, akatim, all the other conditions, etc. Fraktor Moshe Feinstein, wait, that's called Pina Lemechel Lemecham. You're changing the item from pot to pot, and says Ramosha, push it, that it's a teiku in the Gemara, and therefore, says Ramosha, you cannot do it. It's fascinating because there's a Shartzion that says, I didn't even mention this whole din. Why not? Because it's push it, it's mutter. So, fascinating how to reconcile these two dinim. The pashtus is we're meikol leha lacham. Says the Mishnah, 2/3 of the way down Lamachazim in Beis Tanur Navin. Shesikua bekash, that's being fueled with straw. Ubigvav or with stubble. Lo yitain, you cannot put food on it. Bein mitaychai, whether you're putting it inside the oven, bein mi al gabav, whether you're putting it on top of the oven. Kupach. Kubach is a different type of oven, and of course, translating this into our oven is a little bit difficult. Kubach is a different type of oven. That again is fueled with straw or stubble. Hareza kikirayim as din of a kira, begafas of eitim, hareza kitanor, as din of a kira that it's mutter, as din of a tanor that it is ulcer. Says the Gemara, Tana Shesikua, Savar Rav Yosef Lameimar mean Toicha. What does that mean? Toicha mamish. Inside the oven, al gaba means al gaba mamish. Next to the oven, avalismoich. But to do smicha on the oven from the outside, everyone will hold. Says Rav Yosef, that's shaper dummy, that's mutter. So Eisvei Abayi Frax Abayi to Rav Yosef. Kupach says Kupach Gvava. What end did the Mishnah say when you have this kupach fueled with kashu gvava rekikirayim gavtan eitzim hareu kitanor va'aser? What do we see? Ha kikira, that when we said it's like a kira, What was the din? Shari. But my askin, what is the case that it's like a kira that it's going to be mutter? Ilem al gabov. If it's on top of the kupach, b'mai. Ilem she'ena garafikatum. Then Elakira, then if you translate it to the case of the Kira, Keda Gufa Ketuma, Nami al Gabel Mishari, but is that Garf Katam Akvi Mutter? Elalav Lismaich must be next door. Ukatani Are Ukataner of Aser, and where we see it's like a Tanner and it's Aser. So how are you telling me that it is Mutter? Amar Rav Ado Barava, Hacha Bekubach Garf Katam, and Tanner Gufa Ketuma Askinon, it's yes Garf Katam. Hareu kitanur, dafagav the garvikatam al gabav is still going to be aser. Why? Tika kira kiguviktuma shaber dami. Says the Gemara, we have a raya to this. Tani what's that by? Tani is gubigachu guava in sayim like vein sarch leimar al gabav vein sarch leimar l'taychay vein sarch leimar begavzu veitzim. Whereas a kubach says gubigachu guava sayim like vein sarch al gabav begavzu veitzim ein sayim chen loy. Bref, the Gemara, Amalei Rav Hacha, Brei the Rav Ashi. Hi, Kupach. This Kupach in the Mishnah, what is it? Dami, what is the case of this Kupach oven? Ikakira Dami, if you look at the Nami, Shmi Mutter. Vikataner Dami, if you look at Gavava, Nami Loi. So, what is the case? What is a Kupach? Amar Le, Nafish Havle Midekira. Zuter Avli Betanur. It's in between. It's between a Tanur and a Kira. Heichidami, says the Gemara. But what is the shape of this kupach? Heichidami Kira. Amar Yisrachanina, kupach is makim sfisas kedira achas. Is a room for one pot on top, and a Kira is makim sfisas kedira shtei kedira. Is with two pots on top. Amar Abaye. That what? Kira is nechlika, kiri put two on top, la'arka on the width, tahira. L'rachba is going to be tamea. Kupach, ben la'arka, ben l'rachba is going to be tar. And translating this din of whether it's where the oven is going to be broken, nechlika, if it's split into two, this is going to be similar to whether called one pot or two pots. If it can be split into two, whether it's going to be considered a broken keli or not. Pick it up from the Mishnah, B'siyata Dishmaya.